Alright, so John Deere History Lawn and Garden Tractors Part 11. I figured I would go over service bulletins. Now, in 1966, after many years of just doing general service bulletins, Deere actually decided to split out the service bulletins into 4 different categories. And that would be lawn and garden, ag tractor and power units, ag implements, and then industrial tractors and equipment. And so what this binder has here, now obviously it says consumer product service bulletins, but it also has the 2-legged Deere instead of the 4-legged Deere that would have been available in 1966. This decal did not come around until 1969. So the service bulletins were a way to communicate with dealers what was going on. And so you either had pages like this, and it will say Minneapolis, Minnesota, or I think Kansas City, and there's I think one for California, there's one for Maryland, a couple others, I think Baltimore. Anyway, but this is actually where they announced the new types of service bulletins. So specifically in 1966, you end up with lawn and garden service bulletins. So it'd be lawn and garden products, service bulletins, agriculture tractors, agriculture implements, and industrial tractors and equipment. So these are pretty common. You can pick those up at any time on eBay. You can generally pick up, whole year sets. Just be really careful about wear, stuff like that. You obviously don't want something that's been chewed on by a mouse. All the dealers got these. And what they contained is they basically contained information that you might need to repair the tractor. I don't want to take them out of this binder because this is the binder they've been in for probably 30 years. So, for instance, in this case up here, we have the neutral start switch. So this is the first bulletin in 1966. We have neutral start switch bracket replacement. And it actually shows you how the bracket is different. And so it said install the new AM blah 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 bracket. The sturdier new bracket has been substituted for the older bracket and is made of heavier gauge steel and has 2 mounting legs rather than 1. So what they're showing is this 1 mounting leg right here. This one has 2 mounting legs. And then incorrect linkage adjustment, so on and so forth. But what I wanted to show you is, since we've already kind of blown through 1966 and 67, I wanted to come ahead to 1968 and the introduction of the 140, because that's kind of where we're at in history. So, oops, sorry, this is still 67. When whoever put the tag on there, they just did 68 and 67 on the same tab. So first up in 1968 was approving the 2 radios that they had, the Bendix and the Motorola, and the Bendix radios for service on the 120s and the 140s, and as well as the 110s over and the 112s over serial number 100,000. Sorry, this is just for the 140s. The 120s were not out yet. And so basically this was the same radio that was available on the 110s in 1967, the last year of the round fenders. Also kind of shows you, this is some oil leaking coming from the bearing, the cylinder bearing retainer for 112 garden tractors prior to serial number 100,000. That's basically the round fender 112s. Wiring changes recommended. This would be in February of 1968. Oops. February of 1968, they're already recommending wiring changes for the early square fenders and the 140s. So obviously it would affect the first 5,000 110s, the first 7,000 112s, and the first almost 3,600 140s. Basically, it kind of gives you instructions on how the wiring changes and stuff like that. I'm not going to get into too many specifics about these changes and things like that, but then tire change, stuff like that. And then what I find really, really interesting is a problem still plagues a lot of 68, 69, 1968, 1969 140 owners, is forward creep with this infernal cam gear or cam control rod, whatever, cam roller they call it, on the bull gear styled hydrostatic transmission. kind of just a funky transmission. This is in March 1968. The 140 was released in January, and they're already trying to eliminate forward creep or reverse creep by adjusting this. And there's actually some other changes that go into this as you move forward. And then here's something that they talk about. They talk about helper springs on this other page. Helper spring for the square fender, and then the adapter for the 43 front blade on the 112 and 110 garden tractors prior to serial number 100,000. So this means that the previous Model 42 blade was no longer available. Now they're just making the Model 43 blade, which we had up until 1993 or 1992 with this general mounting system, and some had hydraulic cylinders, some did not. And then this would be the adapter onto a round fender. So some of you have seen those. Those were available. And then May of 1968, we're back to the cam roller on the 140 spring loading. They actually updated the spring in a later version of the service bulletins. So kind of interesting stuff. Some of this stuff is not covered under the service manuals. Some of it is, depending on the year of the service manual. If you have a really early service manual, then it may not cover some of the changes that were in these service bulletins. That's why Deere released them. And like I said, nowadays they have dealer technical assistance or DTAC options. And I'll, as we move forward in history, I'll pull up some of the DTAC options. You know, whether it be I think one of the funniest ones is on the 455s and 415s in the 90s. They actually end up where the cap bolts on the pulley on the crankshaft were not tightened on a couple thousand 455s and 415s, led to premature crankshaft wear, and literally in the bulletin it says replace the crankshaft, and that's a very expensive fix. So whether it was under warranty or not, I don't know. I don't know how the dealers handled that. But anyway, these are the service bulletins. This folder covers through, I want to say 1972, I believe. Yes, 1972. And then I'll actually pick up the camera here real quick. You can see the mess of an office that I have. And those are all of the rest of the service bulletins up through 2001. And I've got another box of them somewhere, so we'll actually make our way through a lot of those. Kind of some really cool information. Also, as I was telling you, the agriculture tractor power service unit bulletins, implement bulletins, and then parts and sales, so on and so forth, and price. So lots of different types of bulletins, lots of different types of folders that Deere offered. We'll eventually make our way through most of those. Some of those down on the bottom they're not all that great. So, we'll eventually get there, and eventually we'll make our way up to this top shelf right there. That's got a bunch of service bulletins and everything. All kind of really cool information that I think is very, very informative. Certainly kind of helps with understanding how changes occurred over time on these machines. So anyway, thanks for watching.